How to perform Yonaso Manasakara by Venerable Rungruan Papasaro, Dr. Rungruan Lim Chu Patapa. In order to transform an unwholesome mind to become wholesome, the Buddha suggested a special technique so-called Yonaso Manasakara to abandon an arising unwholesomeness and to keep the mind in wholesomeness at all times by having a mindfulness with careful attention on Dharma. The Yonaso Manasakara is a mindfulness application to monitor on the mind condition, and if the mind is unwholesome, then we can correct the problem by having a proper Dharma to abandon the arising unwholesomeness, and after then the mind will become internally steadied, composed, unified, and concentrated. This a breakthrough discovery that by having a mindfulness, then the mind can become concentrated as well. The Yonaso Manasakara as a faculty routine can be presented step by step as follows. Step 1. A mindfulness must be initialized when having a consciousness. For example, by having mindfulness breathing, that is, when breathing in, he knows I am breathing in, and when breathing out, he knows I am breathing out. Then applying the mindfulness to monitor the breathing whether it is short or long. After then applying the mindfulness on the mind condition whether it is wholesome or unwholesome. Step 2. By having a mindfulness to realize whether the mind is wholesome or unwholesome. Typically, when a mindfulness is initialized, it will be aware of the condition of mind in terms of the state of mind whether it is wholesome or unwholesome as follows.
The simplest way to investigate the Dharma is to have a mindfulness to see, sense, a particular arising state of mind. Let me give you some examples. When you be greedy on something, you can have a mindfulness to be aware of the greed inside your mind. And when you are not greedy on anything, you also can have a mindfulness to be aware that there is no greed inside your mind. Is that right? The same as, when you be hateful on someone, you can have a mindfulness to be aware of the hatred inside your mind. And when you are not hateful on anyone, you also can have a mindfulness to be aware that there is no hatred inside your mind. Is that right? The same as, when you be delusive on something, you can have a mindfulness to be aware of the delusion inside your mind. And when you are not delusive on anything, you also can have a mindfulness to be aware that there is no delusion inside your mind. Is that right? Even when you have any combination of the three, that is, greed, hatred, and delusion, then you also can be aware of the arising of particular states of mind inside the mind. So does when there is no any combination of the three conditions, that is, greed, hatred, and delusion, then you also can be aware that there is no any combination of them inside the mind. Is that right? This is how we have a mindfulness to monitor on a particular state of mind, and then we can investigate on the mind condition.
Step 3. When checking the condition of mind, if the mind is wholesome, then the mind will be glad with mindfulness. And then the mind will automatically reinitiate a mindfulness, resulting in having a continuation of mindfulness as a way to retain the mindfulness throughout the practice. The Venerable Mahakaccana utilized this condition of wholesomeness to reinitiate a mindfulness by having a merit activity as follows.
1. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness of Buddha such as the goodness of his wisdom, his purity, and his compassion, then the mind will abandon the arising unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a recollection of the Buddha by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of Dharma of the Buddha.
2. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness of Dharma such as the Dharma is well proclaimed, the Dharma is to be seen by an individual, the Dharma is timeless, the Dharma is inviting for inspection, the Dharma is leading onward, and the Dharma is directly experience-able, then the mind will abandon the unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a recollection of the Dharma by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of Dharma.
3. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness of the community of noble disciples such as this is a community of good conduct, of upright conduct, of right conduct, of proper conduct, worth of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offers, worthy of salutation, and virtue for the world, then the mind will abandon the unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a recollection of the orders of noble disciple by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of the Dharma of noble disciples.
4. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness of moralities, then the mind will abandon the unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a morality meditation by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of Dharma of morality.
5. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness of charities or the good things that we have done in the past, then the mind will abandon the unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a charity meditation by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of Dharma of the past charities.
6. By having a mindfulness determining on the goodness to be an angel such as kindness and compassion, then the mind will abandon the unwholesomeness, and then the mind will be glad with mindfulness.
Note, this kind of technique is a basis for a compassion meditation by having a mindfulness with careful attention on the wholesomeness of Dharma of compassion. When having a mindfulness reminds of something merit, the mind will become wholesome, and be glad. The gladness will reinitiate a mindfulness for the next round of consciousness. Step 4, in case of the mind is unwholesome, that is, being struggling, non-internally steadied, restless with desire and lust, then we have to apply a mindfulness with the proper Dharma to abandon the unwholesomeness, then the mind will become internally steadied, composed, unified, and concentrated. The Buddha suggested to have a mindfulness with careful attention on Dharma in 6 ways to abandon the unwholesome mind as follows.
When having a consciousness, no matter what kinds of a mental phenomenon is arising, then having a mindfulness with systematic execution. That is, having a mindfulness to determine whether the mind is wholesome or unwholesome, and when detecting any unwholesomeness, then applying the mindfulness to cope with the problem by these 6 following ways. 1. When eating food, then having a mindfulness to control on a diet. 2. When having a consciousness in receiving a stimulus through the 6 sense bases, then having a mindfulness on a proper Dharma to contain the emotion, and do not let the mind to be involved with that matter. 3. In case of encountering with an unwholesomeness in the mind, then having a mindfulness on a proper Dharma to abandon it. 4. In case of encountering with an unwholesomeness in the mind, then having a mindfulness on a proper Dharma to resist the desire and lust. 5. In case of encountering with a strong emotion which is difficult to handle it, then we have to apply in 2 steps of execution, which is to have a mindfulness on a proper Dharma to abstain it first, and then abandoning it later. 6. Finally, by performing an insight observation to see the Dharma as it really is, then gaining wisdom. By this time, after an insight wisdom is developed, then we will apply a mindfulness with wisdom for the destruction of the taints, and then the mind will be liberated.
Even when the mind is unwholesome, but when having a mindfulness to abandon the unwholesomeness, then the mind will be glad, and the gladness will reinitiate a mindfulness for the next round of consciousness. Step 5, in performing Yoniso Manasikara, no matter the mind will be either wholesome or unwholesome, then mind will become glad with wholesomeness, and then reinitiating a mindfulness for performing the next round of Yoniso Manasikara. In principle, the Yoniso Manasikara will keep the mind to be mindful at all times, and this is a way to have a mindfulness throughout the Buddhist practice. The expected critical achievement from this practice, in Buddhist practice, after learning about how to initiate a mindfulness, then performing Yoniso Manasikara to have mindfulness at all times during the practice, and from now on, when performing a meditation, the mind also have a mindfulness with concentration, so-called a mindfulness meditation in Buddhist practice.